Hello and greetings to all. I wanted to continue the conversation that I began with the video that I recorded yesterday, which dealt with Zimmerman and him coming back to the headlines all across social media. I did advise you guys that I'd be speaking about race, ethnic origin, ethnicity, nationality, uh, and of course, ethnic identity, which is the one that we should be pursuing. Now, ethnic identity is defined as a sense of belonging based on one's ancestry, cultural heritage, values, traditions, rituals, and often language and religion. Now, people have different explanations as to what their race is. You can ask the average Hispanic or Latino what their race is, and they'll say Hispanic, Latino, Chicano, Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban. Now, we all know that those aren't races, right? They're not ethnicities either. And they can't be nationalities because if you're a Puerto Rican American, you weren't born in Puerto Rican. Puerto Rican American pretty much defines who you are culturally, but it still doesn't quite answer the question as to what your race or ethnicity is. Now, people who get more technical will begin saying that I'm mestizo. I am, I am of African descent. I am indigenous, but for the most part, mestizo, mulatto, those are a little more prevalent since the most of us, not necessarily the most of us, but it is more common that we are of mixed race, as Hispanic or Latino. So pretty much the umbrella term Hispanic or Latino keeps us from wanting to discover who we really are intrinsically as far as race. Now, pretty much conceding to everything that goes, that is brought upon by race, pretty much leaves you open to racism, leaves you open to colorism and whatnot. So ethnic identity, as a definition that I just read, I believe is a bit more wholesome because it doesn't deal only with racial characteristics, but heritage, ancestry, values. So pretty much as Hispanic, Latino, Mestizo, and whatnot, all of these facets in our life that comprise ethnic identity have been distorted. The two less important ones that are named at the end, and this is according to the International Encyclopedia of Social and Behavioral Sciences, second edition from 2015. The least important ones are language and religion. Well, what happens with a lot of Hispanics, what defines us is our language, Hispanic, Latino, Hispano, and we tend to also identify with religion, mostly Catholicism. But as generations have departed from everything traditional, everything Catholic, more people are going toward Protestant, Jehovah's Witness, Mormonism. So it's really not quite common for people to be of the Catholic faith, but oftentimes it's pretty much a part of our identity. Well, when we go to our ancestry and our heritage, pretty much, in ancient times, Catholicism and Christianity not only were forced upon our ancestors, but in reality, they were not as intrinsic as other forms of spirituality, which are still somewhat prevalent in our identity. We just don't acknowledge them as such. And the closer we get to Christianity and Eurocentrism, the more we avoid everything that resounds in our pagan background. For instance, I have spoken about syncretisms. For example, the Yaqui were actually all colonized in part by the Jesuits, which are a Catholic organization. And so Catholicism is very intrinsic to Yaqui culture, the Yoeme, which is what they call themselves and each other. And so they've come up with the syncretism in which they've rationalized a lot of their ancient beliefs with Christianity. So they're pretty much one and the same. Their flag, both in the Mexican sector of the Yaquis as well as the Pascua in Arizona, their flag does include the cross. Now the cross meant something to their indigenous ancestors, and it means something to them as Christians, neo-Christians. So that pretty much just reaffirms the identity and makes it stronger, so that it's one and the same. A lot of other indigenous groups in Mexico pull up a random YouTube video and look, for example, the Nahua traditions, and a lot of them do contain Christian/Catholic symbolism as well as ancient indigenous, but they've gone through a slight makeover where an original practitioner wouldn't really comprehend exactly what is going on because it's undergone a Christian makeover. This also happened with the orishas of the of the African imports, how they were masqueraded as Christian saints. So I will develop that as well, because I kind of was looking for an example in Mexican culture where saints were masqueraded. Where original deities or concepts were masqueraded under a Christian facade to continue worship and add veneration. And there is an instance of a Cristo Negro. If y'all would want to look it up, I don't have my notebook to give you more specific details, but that Cristo Negro, it's a Christ that is completely black skin, very dark skin, and under the facade of this black Christ, the original Nahua population of this particular town, because Tezcatlipoca, the deity concept, whatever you want to term this god, presided over that particular area because it's kind of like a patron saint. They had different territories. So when Christianity was forced upon them, they found a way to maintain these relationships with their original deities, just masquerading them enough to, furtively continue to venerate them without being persecuted by or punished by the Spaniards. So it's very interesting how Tezcatlipoca and the cult to Tezcatlipoca continued unto the facade of this black Christ, and all under the noses of the Spaniards because they were just happy to the fact that the natives were taking in Christianity. What happened with the Virgen of Guadalupe? Like all these old renditions of Mary are light-skinned. She was a Jew. So we tend to think of her as a light-skinned person when in reality, Jewish people may have been a bit darker, probably even darker than me. And then we have this Morena Virgen, kind of synchronizing the old mother goddess with the new mother of Jesus, just to strengthen that command of Christianity over the natives. So as you can see, our ethnic identity is completely distorted since we're not able to connect the dots. We have all these separate dots, and because of that, we have this misconstrued sense of identity. Well, when we re-indigenize, that is when we begin to connect the dots and we begin to bring out that which stands out as something that never departed from us and that which is really unnecessary and continues to hinder our growth. So from here, I'm going to go into more detail as to how we can salvage our different facets of our identity to bring forth a more wholesome ethnic identity. And then we'll also discuss a lot of these syncretisms and how they have hindered the development of our people, and how once stripped, we can really get to the bottom of what's hiding underneath all those layers of misunderstanding and forced Christianity. So stay tuned. Just a short little informational video, but I will develop this discussion in detail. Farewell.